That one small moment made everyone uncomfortable, not because of what happened, but because of what people thought was happening. One look, one wrong assumption, and suddenly the room felt heavy. This is how a simple situation turned into silent judgment, side eyes, and tension nobody wanted to talk about. What started as a normal day quickly shifted when the girls were all in the same space, already carrying their own stress, emotions, and unfinished business. Nothing was calm. To begin with, everyone had something on their mind, and they already felt tight. When you put strong personalities together, it doesn't take much for things to go left, and that's exactly what happened here. A moment that should have passed without notice suddenly became the center of attention. No words were said at first, but the look spoke loud enough. The issue wasn't the action itself. The issue was how fast people jumped to conclusions. Instead of asking questions or showing understanding, judgment showed up first. Some faces showed shock, some showed confusion, and others showed straight-up discomfort. You could tell people were thinking more than they were speaking. In that silence, stories were being made up in their heads, and once that happens, it's hard to pull things back. This moment also showed how women are often watched more closely than they should be. Every move gets noticed, every action gets picked apart, and when something looks different or unexpected, people don't always lead with kindness. They lead with opinions. What made it worse was that nobody paused to think there could be a real reason behind it. Instead, assumptions filled the gap where understanding should have been. You could feel how alone that made her feel, standing there, knowing people were looking, knowing they were thinking something that wasn't true, but not knowing how to explain it without making things even more awkward. That kind of silence can feel louder than any argument, and in that moment, it wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about feeling judged by people who were supposed to be sisters, friends, and support. This scene quietly reminded everyone that not everything needs a reaction, not every moment needs a comment, and not every situation is what it looks like on the outside. But once that line of judgment is crossed, even unintentionally, it can change the mood of the entire room. What should have been a normal moment turned into tension that nobody knew how to address yet, and that tension didn't disappear. It stayed, waiting for someone to finally speak up. The tension didn't stop after that moment passed. It followed. Everyone like an unspoken cloud, sitting quietly in the room while conversations continued like nothing was wrong. People laughed, talked, and moved around, but their energy had changed. You could feel it in the pauses, in the way eyes avoid each other, in how certain people suddenly became very busy. No one wanted to be the first to bring it up, because bringing it up meant admitting they had thoughts they weren't proud of. What made it harder was how quickly judgment can turn into distance. Instead of checking in, some of the girls pulled back, their tone shifted, their body language changed. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it was there. And when someone notices that kind of change, it stings. It sends a message without words. Something about you made us uncomfortable. That kind of message hits deep, especially when it comes from people you trust. The silence also gave room for whispers. Not loud gossip, but quiet side conversations. Short looks followed by lowered voices. Small comments that weren't meant to travel but somehow always do. Those moments can break a person down slowly. No one was asking what was really going on. No one stopped to think that maybe this wasn't about attention or shock value. Maybe it was personal. Maybe it was health-related. Maybe it was something that didn't need explaining at all. This situation highlighted how fast people expect women to explain their bodies, as if they owe everyone an answer, as if privacy stops being important once curiosity kicks in, and that pressure can feel unfair. The truth is, not everything needs to be understood by everyone. Some things are just part of life. But in that room, it felt like understanding had been replaced by discomfort. And discomfort had turned into judgment. You could see how it affected her mood. She became quieter, more aware of herself. Every movement felt watched. That kind of awareness can make a person shrink It can make them question whether they belong in that space anymore. And the saddest part is that none of this came from something she did wrong. It came from people reacting instead of reflecting. This moment also revealed deeper cracks in the group. Some people were quick to judge because they were already carrying their own insecurities. Others stayed silent because they didn't want to rock the boat. And a few noticed what was happening but didn't know how to step in without making it worse. That's how small moments grow into bigger problems, not because of the situation itself, but because of how people choose to handle it. By the end of it, nothing had been said out loud, but everything had been felt. The room didn't feel the same anymore. Trust felt a little weaker. Comfort felt a little further away. And even though everyone moved on with the day, that moment stayed in the back of their minds, waiting, building, ready to come back up when emotions finally boiled over. As time went on, the weight of that moment started showing in small but clear ways. Conversations felt shorter. Smiles didn't reach the eyes. Even simple interactions felt careful, like everyone was walking around something fragile they didn't want to break. The group had been through plenty before, but this felt different because it wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, and quiet tension can be the hardest to deal with. Some of the girls tried to act normal, but their actions gave them away. They avoided sitting too close. They changed topics quickly. They laughed a little too hard at jokes that weren't funny. These are the signs people show when they're uncomfortable but don't want to admit it. And for her, noticing these changes made everything worse. It confirmed what she already felt in her chest. She was being looked at differently now. The pressure of being misunderstood can wear a person down. It makes you replay moments in your head, wondering what you could have done differently, even when you did nothing wrong. She kept thinking about whether she should explain herself or stay quiet. Explaining meant opening up and risking more judgment. Staying quiet meant letting people believe whatever story they had already made up. Neither option felt safe. What hurt the most was realizing that some of the judgment came from women who had faced their own struggles, women who knew what it felt like to be misunderstood. Yet in this moment, empathy was missing. Instead of support, there was distance. Instead of care, there was curiosity. And curiosity without compassion can be cruel, even when it isn't meant to be. This situation also showed how friendship can be tested in unexpected ways, not by big betrayals or loud fights, but by moments where people fail to show up emotionally. When someone needs understanding the most, silence can feel like rejection. And even though no one said anything directly, the lack of support spoke volumes. One of the hardest parts was watching how the group dynamic shifted. There was a clear divide between those who felt uncomfortable and those who felt confused. A few sensed that something wasn't right, but they didn't have enough information to fully understand. They felt stuck between speaking up and staying out of it. And in that pause, the situation kept growing heavier. Her confidence took a hit. She became more guarded, less open. That kind of change doesn't happen overnight, but moments like this plant the seed. When a person feels judged for something natural, it can change how they see themselves. It can make them feel small, even in a room where they once felt safe. This moment became more than just an awkward situation. It turned into a mirror, showing everyone who they were in that space, who judged, who stayed silent, who noticed but didn't act, and who quietly felt the weight of it all. Nothing had been resolved yet, but the emotional damage had already been done. And until someone spoke up, that tension was only going to grow stronger. Eventually, the truth found its way into the open, not through drama or shouting, but through a calm moment of honesty. It didn't happen all at once. It came slowly, in pieces, when emotions finally settled enough for someone to speak without anger. And when the reality was understood, the room shifted again. This time with a mix of relief and regret hanging in the air. Some of the girls felt embarrassed. Once they realized how wrong their assumptions had been, the looks they gave before now felt heavy on their conscience. It's one thing to think something quietly, but another to realize those thoughts caused real hurt. Guilt showed up in small ways. Softer voices, avoided eye contact, awkward attempts to change the mood, apologies that weren't always spoken, but clearly felt. Others reacted with understanding, wishing they had stepped in sooner. They replayed the moment in their heads, thinking about how easily they could have asked a simple question or offered support instead of. Staying silent, that kind of regret, doesn't come from bad intentions. It comes from fear of speaking up, and fear, in moments like these, can do just as much damage as judgment. For her, finally being understood brought relief. But it didn't erase everything. Being clear doesn't automatically heal the feeling of being watched or judged. Trust takes time to rebuild once it's shaken. Even when people mean well, the memory of that moment stays. It becomes something you carry quietly, a reminder of how fast things can change. This situation also opened the door for reflection within the group. It forced everyone to look at how quickly they jump to conclusions and how often they expect explanations for things that aren't their business. It became clear that not every moment needs an opinion, and not every situation needs a response. Sometimes, the best thing you can offer is space and understanding. The dynamic between the women didn't fully return to what it was before, but it did shift in a more honest direction. Some bonds grew stronger because of the conversation. Others felt strained, showing cracks that had been there all along. And that's the thing about moments like this. They don't just pass. They revealed that in the end, this wasn't really about the situation itself. It was about how people treat each other when things feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. It was about learning when to pause, when to listen, and when to show compassion instead of judgment. The lesson was simple but powerful. You never know what someone is dealing with, so kindness should always come first. As everyone moved forward, that moment stayed behind as a quiet reminder. A reminder that sisterhood isn't just about being there during the big moments, but also during the small, awkward ones, and how you handle those moments can say everything about who you are. Even after the truth came out, the aftermath of that moment continued to ripple through the group. It wasn't dramatic in a loud, obvious way, but it was subtle, like a shadow moving quietly across a room. The girls had to navigate their feelings, their assumptions, and their reactions all at once, which made simple interactions feel heavier than before. What had started as a small misunderstanding had now become a turning point, revealing how fragile trust and comfort can be when communication is missing. Some of the women struggled with their own guilt. They replayed the scene repeatedly in their minds, thinking about how they had let assumptions guide their reactions, the realization that they could have caused someone real discomfort, even unintentionally, weighed heavily. Small gestures, like a smile or a laugh, suddenly felt loaded with potential misinterpretation. They became hyper-aware of how their presence affected others, and in doing so, they also learned a little more about themselves, how quickly judgment can take over and how easily fear of confrontation can silence understanding. Others tried to shift the energy in the group by breaking the tension with light conversation or humor, but it wasn't as simple as it used to be. What might have passed as a casual laugh before now carried a layer of caution. They were aware of the undercurrent that hadn't fully gone away. Even the girls who had originally been silent during the awkward moment found themselves observing more, listening more, and choosing their words carefully. That silence, which had once created discomfort, was now being used deliberately to avoid repeating the same mistakes. Meanwhile, the person at the center of it all was learning something different. She noticed the subtle changes in how people interacted with her, not just the avoidance or the judgment, but also the attempts at reconciliation and understanding. It was a mix of emotions, relief that the truth was finally recognized, but also lingering wariness, because even when misunderstandings are cleared up, the memory of being watched or misjudged doesn't disappear overnight. It's like carrying a weight that no one else can see, but that shapes the way you move through space and relationships. This situation also tested the strength of the friendships within the group. It revealed who could handle discomfort with empathy, who could confront situations with honesty, and who struggled to face their own assumptions. Some relationships grew stronger because a genuine effort was made to repair what had been damaged. Others remained fragile, marked by an unspoken acknowledgement that things weren't exactly the same as before. That tension doesn't always manifest in arguments. It shows up in small hesitations, in unspoken words, and in the careful way people choose to interact. The fallout extended beyond just the moment itself. It became a reference point for how the group handled conflict and discomfort moving forward. Each member carried lessons from the incident about patience, about empathy, and about the danger of assumptions. Even subtle interactions were now framed by an awareness of the impact of judgment. They learned that silence isn't always neutral, and attention without compassion can be harmful. By the end of this period, the group wasn't completely healed, but they were evolving. They had faced a moment that tested their dynamics and had come out with a deeper understanding of each other and themselves. The experience became a quiet catalyst for growth, a reminder that even small, seemingly insignificant situations can uncover vulnerabilities, shift relationships, and challenge the very foundations of trust and connection. What remained most important was that this moment, while uncomfortable, opened the door to self-reflection and accountability. Everyone had been forced to look inward and consider how their actions or inactions affect others. And in a group like this, where emotions run high and personalities are strong, that kind of growth is essential. It's not just about surviving awkward moments, it's about learning from them and becoming better for it.